Hello guys, and welcome once again to Savannah Essence. So today we are talking about why your shea butter is grainy and ways to salvage it. We produce and sell shea butter here at Savannah Essence. We've had a number of our clients ask us this question and we just wanted to clarify. And for those of you who don't know, this is how grainy shea butter looks like. It comes in these small clumps, small lumps, small grains like seeds. Instead of being the smooth texture we know shea butter to be, sometimes they come in these grainy forms. Sometimes your shea butter, if it's in a container, the upper part of it all looks smooth, and then once you get to the middle part of it, you realize that it has become grainy from that area. And people usually ask why. For people who produce body butter or who produce whipped shea butter, this becomes a problem for them because this texture follows through to the final product, and it's really not a very appealing end product for customers. And so people have always wondered whether that means that their shea butter is no good, or it means that their shea butter has gone bad or is going bad. And this has been a question that I've received a number of times from clients. So no, if your shea butter is grainy, that doesn't mean that it's gone bad. On the contrary, it means that you have a shea butter with good enough fatty acids that are actually performing the functions they are supposed to perform. Let me also just say that in this video, I'll be sharing with you a visit that I took a couple of months ago to a shea nut forest. And so for those of you who have never seen how shea trees look like, how a shea fruit looks like, I'll take you through that journey with me whilst I talk about how to fix your grainy shea butter. So this is shea fruits. So this is the fruit that contains the shea nuts, and it's from the shea nuts that we make our shea butter. So let's get on to the question why your shea butter is grainy. Your shea butter is grainy simply because of temperature difference. That's all. It's temperature, a variation in temperature that causes your shea butter to be grainy. Full stop. Nothing more, nothing less. And this is also because of the composition of fatty acids in your shea butter. Now, a lot of you might have heard that shea butter contains maybe oleic acid, palmitic acid, and it's because of these things that give shea butter, all those moisturizing and other properties. In our marketing campaigns, we use these fatty acids, but some of us do not actually understand the part the fatty acids play in the overall structure of the shea butter, and that is basically why your shea butter might be grainy. So it's basically because of the fatty acid compositions and temperature variation. That is why your shea butter is grainy. So let me explain that a little bit more, and I'm going to try to stay away from the deep science and just sort of try and make it a little bit simple. So like I already mentioned, shea butter contains a number of fatty acids. Major amongst these are oleic acid, stearic acid, palmitic acid, linoleic acid, linolenic acid, aragidic acid, oloric acid, and a host of other fatty acids. Now, these fatty acids have different composition. So what that means is that when you pick an average shea butter, the amount of oleic acid in it might be different from the amount of stearic acid in it, might be different from the amount of linoleic acid in it, but they generally have a proportion that we expect your average shea butter to have. Now, I have my dog is back and it's late in the night, so sorry for that. So generally, oleic acid, your shea butter is likely to have between 40 to 60% of oleic acid in it. That's a huge chunk of your shea butter. So almost half of the composition of your shea butter might be from oleic acid. Your shea butter might also have between 20 to 50% of stearic acid. So shea butter contains two strong fatty acids, and these are oleic acid and stearic acid. We also have other ones such as palmitic acid, which is between 2 to 9%. We have linoleic acid, which is between 3 to 11%. And then we have the other smaller ones like the aragidic and the other ones that I mentioned earlier on. Those ones are usually between, less than 1%. So let's stick to the bigger ones like the oleic acid, the stearic acid, and let's also even add the other ones like the palmitic acid and the linoleic acid. Right, so these are the composition of these fatty acids. Now let's come to the melting point. Like I said, your shea butter is grainy because of the fatty acid composition. I've already mentioned that, and also because of temperature variation. So let's see why temperature variation is important. Now these fatty acids that your shea butter have different melting points. So again, let's go to the bigger ones. Oleic acid is your average shea butter contains between 40 to 60% of oleic acid. Oleic acid has a melting point of between 13 to 14 degrees Celsius. I don't know the conversion to Fahrenheit. I'm in Ghana, so we use a degree Celsius. So yes, oleic acid has a melting point of between 13 to 14 degrees Celsius. And then the next bigger one, which is stearic acid, has a melting point of 69 degrees Celsius. So you see the difference in the melting point. So once your shea butter, maybe if it's in a solid form, is exposed to varied temperature. So let's say it's exposed to a temperature of maybe 20 degrees Celsius. That means that the oleic acid components in your shea butter will start melting. Meanwhile, because it exceeded its melting point of 13 to 14 degrees Celsius, but the stearic acid component of your shea butter is going to continue to stay solid because it has a melting point of 69 degrees Celsius. So unless you are exposed to a very high temperature at once, or a very low temperature at once, your shea butter will, the fatty acid composition, some of it will stay in a liquid form and some of it will stay in a solid form until it meets a very high temperature or a very low temperature. So if you are melting it, let's say under fire, then that means that all your fatty acids melt at the same time. If your shea butter is in a very cool area like in a refrigerator, then that means that they all cool at the same time and it becomes solid. But if it is in a temperature that varies, then that means that some of the fatty acids will start melting. And once they melt and leave the solid form stays in a solid grainy form, and then the liquid one also stays moist as a liquid. And then when it gets exposed to maybe a lower temperature, then that part of the melted butter also now forms its own solid and becomes a grain. So basically that's what happens to shea butter, and that's why it forms a grain. So if I have shea butter, for instance, I'm in the north of Ghana, the temperature in the north of Ghana is quite high than the temperature in the south of Ghana. So if I'm shipping shea butter from my area to Accra, and I put the shea butter in a solid form in a vehicle, once the vehicle starts to move, we know that moving vehicle starts to heat up. So you have the oleic acid component of your shea butter starting to melt, while your stearic acid stays that way because, unless it reaches 69 degrees Celsius in the vehicle, nothing really happens. And so that's what happens until perhaps you start getting to the BA area. Once you get to the BA area, then the temperature starts cooling down, and perhaps your oleic acid component will start cooling. And once it starts cooling, it forms a crystal because it was on its own. It's melted on its own. The other partner stayed as a solid. And so when it's cooling down on its own, and then it forms its own crystal. And so basically that's why your shea butter is grainy. So to salvage that, you just melt it like I did in this case. I usually use a microwave to make it simpler. You can use a double boiler method. Melt your shea butter. Once it's melted, you expose it to very high temperature. So melt it and then expose it to very low temperature, and then you put it in the fridge so that it solidifies and becomes even. That is the only way to salvage grainy shea butter. So I know that this might be a little bit confusing, but simply because if you've not taken anything away from this video, it's two things. It's because of varying temperature. So it's because your shea butter has been exposed to different temperatures, and the fatty acid composition of your shea butter has different melting points. And so when it reaches one melting point, one melts, whilst one stays a solid and one stays a liquid. And when it gets, vice versa. And that's why your shea butter is grainy. And I hope this video will be helpful. It adds to you in your formulation journey. Let us know if you have any other question. I know I spoke a lot about this and maybe I have confused somebody else. That was not the intention, but in case I did, just ask questions in the comment section and I'll take time to answer it. Let me also say that at the local level, when our women are producing the shea butter, they stir it over and over and over to ensure that there's even temperature distribution amongst, all the in the shea butter. So in the production process, if you've seen shea butter being produced, you see our rural women stirring the shea butter that has been filtered over and over and over again. That is basically to ensure that the temperature is evenly spread and that it makes the shea butter cool down at a faster rate, so that every single fatty acid cools down at the same time. So basically, that is why your shea butter is grainy. It's not bad. It's actually very good that your shea butter is grainy. So thank you very much. I hope you subscribe to this channel and I hope this was very helpful to you. Subscribe if you like it, share it amongst your friends, give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate all the support we are getting here, although we started a couple of months ago. So thank you very much, and then visit any of our social media pages to order your products. Until next time, thank you very much. See ya.